with the Minneapolis Indian Center when I was 24 years old. I went on to be recruited to join Red Schoolhouse and in the very early days of the survival schools. And the survival schools were really the precursors to the whole charter school movement nationally. And a lot of that came a lot of people don't know that, but that came right out of Minneapolis and St. Paul. So I kind of, learned about government programs and community and economic development during my about 20-year career in the Twin Cities. From there, I went on to work at the national level. I went on to DC. I worked at the Democratic National Headquarters as the first national paid staff person in 1988. Worked for 3 presidential candidates. I went on to DC. And in doing that, I'd like to talk a little bit about, I'm probably not going to answer each question directly because we have limited time, but I'll touch on them. One is, my background, am I qualified? Well, I have passed Secret Service clearance 3 times in my life. It's not easy to get past Secret Service clearance. And I have done that 3 different times working for 3 presidential candidates. So there's probably nothing that the United States government does not know about me, including how many parking tickets I got, which is my biggest crime. I've had some unpaid parking tickets. But so as far as that, have a background check, I've been through extreme background checks, much more than anything the tribe would have done. And I've passed every one of them. Why am I running? I never wanted to run for political office. I had a good professional career writing. I liked what I was doing. I liked doing program development. I like writing. And in every different career job I've had, the universal theme through it has always been my writing, whether it was writing grants, whether it was writing policy, whether it was writing campaign literature, whether it was running a national quarterly magazine, which I did, whether it was doing outreach for National Television Network, which I also did. I worked in print, radio, television, and in urban nonprofits and tribal governments, the common theme being writing. So that was what I was content to do. Why did I decide to run this time? Because I could no longer make excuses for not running. I would always get people asking me, you know so much about tribal government, how come you never run for office? And I always said, well, I think I'm doing enough with what I'm doing. I don't need to run for office. I didn't think I'd make a very good politician because I'm basically a workaholic, and I'm probably never going to be a good social worker. Those that are close to me know that. They've heard me say that. But I finally could not come up with a good enough reason to why I did not want to do public service. Because I've worked on campaigns for 30 years for people that dedicated their life to public service. I helped elect them. And yet myself, I never wanted to run. It finally got to the point where I did not have a good excuse. I think that I've got 40 years of experience and a record of accomplishment, that I have something to offer to my tribe. And I feel that I won't go in there and have to be on the learning curve. It's not going to be on the job training for me. I know all the programs, but being a chairman and council is more than being a supervisor of programs. And I think that's where we've gone wrong. I don't want to go in there and look over the shoulders of program staff. All of those programs, and most of them are, for the most part, are federally funded. They have to abide by criteria, federal criteria. And so there is built-in accountability. Granted, people can say, well, so-and-so takes too many smoke breaks. I don't want to waste my time worrying about how many smoke breaks someone takes. I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is try to focus on issues that are going to move our tribe ahead. and move us ahead so that we can be self-sufficient in 100 years. I don't want to get in the weeds and worry about who's related to who, because we're tribal people. We're all related on this reservation in one way or another. So that's kind of a false, you know, accusation in the first place. But here's where we're at. We've got 14,000 tribal members, 14,000. And how many babies are born every day? And our land base, we need more land. But you know what else we need? We need infrastructure. And the tribal government, just like every county, just like the national government, keeps kicking the can down the road. And the council's heard me say that, never dealing with the fact that we can't build any more houses. We can't put up any more buildings or programs if we don't have the infrastructure to support it. And that's where we're at. We're finally at that level where we have to do something. Those of you, and I know this is off reservation Indian, so I should probably refocus back out to what their issues are. So if you don't mind, I'll stop on the infrastructure speech because that's one of my soapboxes. Let me talk about off reservation rights, and let's get right to, do I support absentee ballots for off reservation members? Yes or no? Now that's not a typical political statement. Let me tell you what I mean. I am willing to listen to both sides of each argument, but having been an urban Indian myself for half of my professional career, I understand one thing, and having worked on multiple campaigns, all politics is local. That's just the way it is. Granted, states have absentee ballots, but you must be a resident in that state in order to qualify to fill out an absentee ballot. Just like us, you must be a resident here to have an absentee ballot. Should off reservation people have a right to vote? Is there a middle ground in there? I would come back with the question, what is the middle ground, and under what circumstances do you think they should have a right to vote? There's something to be said about participating in your culture, participating in your community life. You know, I lived in, like I said, in urban areas. One of my jobs, I lived in Northern California and Southern California. And I knew Sister-Wapton tribal members who had never set foot on the Lake Traverse Reservation. They were enrolled here. They grew up in California. They spent their life in California. They knew California. Did they know Sister-Wapton? No, they did not. Did they get benefits? Yes, they did. They got higher education benefits through gaming. They got benefits for their elderly cards. But where was their investment into us? What did they give back to the tribe? That's what I never heard. I think I would love to see a program where we have our highly educated tribal members, and I've met a lot of them from the East Coast to the West Coast, Sister-Wapton Sioux tribal members. I would like to see them come back and do a year of service here on the reservation. I would like to see us set up a program. We have a tribal school, which, by the way, I helped create, Teoshpazina. That also was one of my institutions, one of my accomplishments over my long career. That tribal school graduated, 33 kids, and it's 33rd year. I remember when that was just a dream, and I was driving back from St. Paul on weekends to write grants all weekend and then go back to work at Red Schoolhouse. And I remember all the people that opposed it. I still remember today who every one of them are. And I guarantee you, by now, the second generation of those people that oppose that school, their kids or they have all worked at that school and benefited from something that they opposed. So I understand that people don't like change, but I also understand as an off-reservation Indian that if you care about your tribe, you should also contribute to your tribe through your talents or your education in whatever way, because it has to be a two-way street.
Okay.
Is there a middle ground in there?
Well,
yes.
Here's my question to you, LeeAnn.
Huh?
The problem is that there's a serious housing shortage, and there's several people that are educated that come and try to work for the tribe and get driven out, or that there are not jobs that are specific to their degrees. And so a lot of people live off reservation. And I kind of think you're really creating a divide by saying, well, you have to live here, or, you got to contribute. I think that's probably everybody's dream, is to come home, but sometimes it's just not a reality. There's just not the jobs or the housing.
Well, you're correct about that. You're right about that, Shannon. And yet, if you want to come home, if you're committed to coming home, is that the real issue, or is the real issue I'll come home if there's the right job? It's kind of a chicken and an egg thing. Which do you do first?
Yeah, but people have to live. So if
Yes.
they don't have a job, if they don't have a job that they can find that's going to support them or their family, then I mean, I just don't think it's realistic.
Do you know how many non-Indian people work at Tiosh Pazina? How many Indian teachers we need?
Oh, I definitely agree with you. But what I'm
Yeah.
saying is that we have a lot of people that are highly educated that there's not a job here for them.
And so they should have a right to vote because they can't find a job.
They should have a right to vote because they're all tribal members.
Okay, and how is that going to help the tribe?
By saying that, I mean, I think what you're setting up here is to say that, okay, if they're off reservation, they're less Dakota or less Sistenwapton than those of us on reservation. That's what I'm getting out of this. So that's why I'm asking you to clarify, because I think that's, I mean, I don't think that's the right approach.
Well, that's exactly what I'm not saying, Shannon. And in fact, I will.
Yes, great. Then
Yeah,
clarify.
well, let me finish. Let me answer. In 1982, I went to court and sued Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's called the St. Paul Intertribal Housing Board versus HUD. That was my court case. And I won that court case in federal court. And what was the purpose of that? Exactly what you just said. When you leave the reservation and cross that border and go back to the city, you don't become less Indian. You still have as much Indian blood as when you were home visiting your grandma as when you went back to your house in Minneapolis. Based on that, I went all the way to federal court to prove that, and I won that case. You can look it up in the Harvard Law Review, St. Paul Intertribal Housing Board versus HUD. That was my case. That set the precedent nationally for urban Indian people to develop their own housing. And I did that on a weekend home, coming home one weekend and said, I'm going to prove this, and I did it. So I have fought for that at the federal level. So I'm not by any means saying that you're less Indian, because I've actually gone to court to prove that that is not true. And
why would they not be able to vote? Why? I want to hear your rationale and reasoning for why you would say they don't deserve to vote.
I didn't say anything about deserve. Don't put words in my mouth. I never said they don't deserve the right to vote. I never said that.
Then please.
I said that it has to be, the tribe needs its talent, right? There has to be some reciprocity there. Just like, it's like, say you're in Minneapolis and you want to go be the, I don't know, the state human rights director or the county human rights director. The government will require that you live in that county in order to be hired. And so there is rationale for being invested in that local community. It isn't just me. It's just that the same way with, if you want to vote in the state election, you have to be a resident in that election. Granted, we're dual citizens, and I think that there's some middle ground there. That's what I would like to find. I would like to take the time to talk to like Minnesota Chippewa tribes or Ho-Chunk Nation or Navajo Nation or Cherokee Nation who do let their off-reservation members vote and have sites for them. Minneapolis Indian Center was a voting site. Ho-Chunks have one in Denver and Minneapolis. Navajos have actually fund urban Indian centers in the Southwest and Southern California, and they can vote there. What I would do is take the time to do the research and present that back to the tribal membership so that everybody can weigh in on the discussion. I'm not saying yes or no. I never do anything in black or white. I've been a planner for too many years to know that there's never just plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. You always have to look and do your research. That's what I would do. In terms of people that live in Minneapolis or Sioux Falls or Fargo or Sioux City or even Denver that come back regularly, I think we could have absentee ballots now with a certain radius within our reservation, those that maintain their cultural, family, and cultural ties with their tribe. Granted, they, of course, they should be able to absentee vote. But those that have never set foot here, have never ever come here, and I know some, they're already getting educational benefits. They are receiving benefits from the tribe, and they can receive any benefits they want if they choose to come home. But at some point, when does the tribe get to the capacity of taking care of itself internally? That's what I'm afraid of, because we have a burgeoning population here right now that we can't take care of. What do we do about them?
Okay, we got some comments on the Zoom. Someone said, thank you, Shannon. That was my case. Nothing fit my degree that I could come back for. Someone else said, I was adopted off the res. What do I do? I live in California now. Someone else said, how many that don't get hired because the board won't hire them? And someone else said, the economic situation in Sisseton prevented me from coming home for 50 years. And some of us did not have the choice to be taken from our families. And then someone else, I think this one is really interesting. How much does one have to give to their tribe to be considered a viable contributor?
Well, that's one way of stating it, but I'm not, it's what you choose to give. I mean, what can you do? Those are questions that don't really get to the issue of coming up with a solution. I said I am open to coming up with a solution, but I would want the opportunity to do the research, to consult with other tribes that are doing this, and to learn from them. I'm sorry, but that's my training, is trying to identify best practices and seeing what works, because they've been down this path. The other path I would go, quite frankly, is like the Cherokee Nation did several years ago, is exploring having a constitutional convention. Because of course we need more people to vote, because we can't change anything in our constitution because we can never get enough votes. But that's why we need to have a constitutional convention. So I would go out of my way to try to do that research to come up with those solutions. And that's the kind of things I would want to focus on as chair. I don't want to focus on trying to micromanage tribal programs or tribal employees. I'm not going to go in there and try to fire a bunch of people. I won't do that, because that's too disruptive to the government, and there are processes in place. A question I would like to get to, though, and there's a number, because I do want to get to these questions here. Question number 5, should the drug testing policy for tribal employees be changed? Absolutely. 2 years ago, I spent quite a bit of time researching this subject, because the Society for Human Resource Management, SHRM, which is the big national HR association, had come out with a position paper which really piqued my curiosity. So I delved into it and started reading as much as I could, started reading about other state legislation, the legalization of marijuana. Well, when South Dakota basically got it on a referendum vote, and no doubt will pass because they had plenty of signatures, so by November, recreational medical marijuana will be legalized in this state, as hemp has been. I absolutely would change that. There's 5 tests under the drug testing, and I would eliminate the one for marijuana, because it's just time to move past that. It's time to move past that, as it is with changing our laws so that people aren't incarcerated or losing their jobs because of it. So most definitely, and I've spent 2 years already researching this, so this is something that I'm just responding to this, because it really came about when I saw the national change in employee policy and drug testing. In that regard, alcohol, and I understand where it came from, because years ago, and I remember those days where alcoholism was so prevalent, We now have council people, past chairmen, everyone, 5 minutes after they swear in, they go out and have a drink. So they've already violated their oath because right now they take an oath to be alcohol and drug free, and then they don't. And not just this last chairman, but several others before. So to me, let's just change the oath, because when are we going to start treating people as adults and giving them some personal responsibility? I understand coming, I came out of the boarding school era myself. I came through all of that. I was in boarding school. I went through all of that. And I was feeling negative, feeling that you did something wrong, and you always had someone else have to tell you what to do. It's time to get past that. It's time to let go of all of that guilt-driven types of policy that was put on us, whether it was by the churches or by whomever, and grow up. So I would get rid of that oath. People who scream and holler say everybody's going to become alcoholics. You know what? We need to, if we want our people to be responsible, we have to give them an opportunity to be responsible and give them that chance. We have plenty of social service programs. We have a safety net. I know I wrote half the grants for them on this reservation. We have a huge a safety net and a way to resolve these problems, but we also need to evolve as well. And so I would change those. Am I going to go have a drink? No, I don't drink. So I don't have a problem keeping that oath at all. That's not it. That's a non-issue for me. But when I see people take it and then violate it, what's the point of taking? What's the point of putting your hand up and swearing to uphold that oath when you're going to violate it that same night? I just I just find it, let's have the discussion and let's get real and let's get honest. That's transparency. To me, that's transparency. Okay. Okay, I already talked about my experience in tribal government. Have I ever had an elected office before? No, I have not. Unless you can call being, I was vice chair of my district one time for 6 months because someone had resigned and I kind of got drafted in the position. And that was my one experience of being a public official, and decided I didn't want to do it because people were calling me at work nonstop. And that's when I was running Dakota Pride, the treatment center. So I didn't never really wanted to be in public office. Uh, some of my accomplishments, I think I've talked quite a bit about those. Everything from educational institutions to social service programs, economic development projects. If you've ever seen the truck plaza down in Meskwaki, that was my project when I was economic development director down there. It's a huge truck plaza. So those are tangible things you can actually see that I've actually done. Um, but I think I've kind of touched on most of these questions. Oh, the one I didn't touch on here. In 2016, we had a positive net position of $99 million after liabilities. I don't know that. I don't think that's true. In 2019, we had 37 million of expenses and projects. Assume we have a similar net position in 2020. How are or would the remaining 62 million be utilized? Well, in 2017-18, I was director of planning economic development for Assistant Wapton, and we had a budget shortfall. So I don't know where this extra money that they're talking about is coming from, because at that time I actually took a pay cut to create another position in my office, and I took no benefits whatsoever. So I didn't have any health care benefits. I didn't take any of that out of the budget because money was so tight. So I don't know where all this money was that we allegedly had. I don't think that that's correct. What would I do when I came in?
LeeAnn, let me come in with a kind of a follow-up question there. You know, whoever gets elected in this election cycle is really going to be walking into, you know, it's going to be financially tough because of the pandemic. So obviously we haven't gotten any distribution from our gaming. So there's going to have to be some tough cuts made. What kind of budget cuts are you thinking about ahead of time now, since you're a planner? Where do you think we're going to have to cut?
As a planner, I don't make decisions in without information. Uh, and so the first thing I would do what I would try to do as planning director, which was do a debt consolidation plan to see where we're at, where we can reduce interest, where we can consolidate debt, and then figure out what we absolutely have to pay and then prioritize it. That's what I tried to do as planning director. That was approved. New administration came in, that went out the window. New planning director came in, that went out the window. We're still back to where we are, where we would have to do a debt reduction plan. I can't make decisions on what to cut, where to cut it in a vacuum. I would have to have that information, and I would have to obviously work very closely with the vice chairman because that's under him.
Well, the budgets are.
But let me give you some ideas. Let me give you some ideas on what I would do, because it isn't just about budget cuts. It's also about how to raise additional money through doing some structural change. Okay, the first one, which I've talked about for almost 10 years now, and I've come home, talked to general counsels. When I came back from California, when I was living in Southern California, I came home for general counsel meeting, and because it was important to me. I wanted to be at general counsel. So I flew back from California to be at my general counsel meeting. And at that time, I tried to talk about redoing our indirect cost rate. The CFO keeps saying that LeeAnn Tallbear doesn't know what she's talking about, but I've actually implemented this strategy with another tribe. I'll give you an example. When I was doing consulting for Lower Sioux tribe, one of the challenges given to me about the council was their healthcare delivery system and needing a new clinic. My response back to them was, you're going to have to raise your indirect cost rate. You can't get everything on grants. Let me tell you why. Because Indian Health Service and the Bureau of Indian Affairs are the two agencies that cannot reduce your indirect cost rate. You have to fight for it, but they're going to have to go along with you. So if you have a 25% indirect cost rate and you go up to a 50% indirect cost rate, you've in fact doubled your ATG money and your BIA, your contract dollars. What that allows you to do, and this is what we did in Lower Sioux, was with that 50, I think it was 51.5, or it might have been 55% indirect cost rate, we went out and built the building, the tribe did. And with the lease money, through the bigger indirect cost rate, was able to service that loan and pay for that brand new clinic building without a single grant, without a single loan. It can be done. And so I have proposed that to my own tribe many times and have been told by the CFO that I do not know what I'm talking about. And my response to that is he does not know what he's talking about. And let me tell you why. He has no vested interest. He's not a tribal member. He's not Indian. It's not his tribe. It's just a job. To me, this is my tribe. I have a vested interest in wanting it to move ahead and wanting it to get financially stable. So there's more to just cutting programs. There's a more to restructure your finances so that you can afford to do more.
Okay, thank you. I think you covered most of the questions. Someone wanted to ask if there are any past discrepancy involving tribal entities or conduct of business concerning family members and or the tribe.
You're talking about my family?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. That's
just, oh, well, they should just say that then. Be direct.
Question. I'm just reading the question. I actually don't know. It's one of the ones gathered from the posts.
Yeah, you got a vague question, you might get a vague answer. You want a direct question, direct answer, ask a direct question. But if they're speaking about me and my family, we're gonna talk about my son, who is the developer of Tallbear Seville Solar. Google it. It's a 20 megawatt solar farm in San Diego County that has a power purchase agreement with San Diego Gas and Electric. It took him 9 years to build that project. Because of that project, he is the single largest native solar developer in the United States. Larger than him, the Navajo Nation, but that's a tribal government. I'm talking about an individual business owner. native business owner. He is the largest in the country. He is a Sistian-Wapton tribal member. When we're developing our solar initiative, because of the reservation, the 125,000 acres in 7 counties in 2 states, we're talking utility scale. And utility scale is defined by the industry as 10 megawatts or larger. He built a 20 megawatt solar farm. When we did the bid out, which by the way, we issued bids, went through procurement. He was the only utility scale developer that applied. Now, one thing I definitely will do is there will be no more sole sourcing to non-Indian businesses when I come in as chair. We will follow our rules. We will follow our policies. I guarantee you, and they will go through procurement. We will not be sole sourcing to non-Indian businesses and not supporting our Indian businesses. Because like you said, Shannon, we have a lot of highly qualified people, tribal members all over the country. And whether they live here or not does not mean that they could not be hired as a contractor or a consultant to help this tribe. But when our tribal government uses the excuse of the COVID or the money crunch as an excuse to hurry up and sole source, I consider that a violation of our Constitution and a violation of their oath. And that's what has been happening. That I will fight against so that we go back to following our policies, our procurement policies. The other thing that I would do, because the past chair has pretty much already, taken it halfway there with the court system, is I would seriously consider returning to a CFR court. And let me tell you why. Because I don't care if it is my worst enemy, I would want them to have the opportunity for a fair trial. A fair and unbiased trial without a judge that does not hang out in the tribal chairman's office every day, but a fair trial to my own worst enemy, because I firmly believe that our civil rights have to be protected. Now, the Indian Civil Rights Act has no teeth in it whatsoever. One of my jobs as chair would be to lobby to get the Indian Civil Rights Act to actually be enforceable. Those are the kind of issues that a chairman should be worrying about, thinking about how do we protect our tribal rights, like the Indian Civil Rights Act, like fighting for additional block grant funding, like addressing the discrepancy in HUD funding in Region 8. There's so many bigger issues out there that's what our legislators should be doing, not micromanaging employees. I would also hire a tribal administrator to do that.
That's what I was going to say, is that is one of the functions of the executive branch, is that they oversee programs. And if we didn't have, if it was a perfect system, then we wouldn't have people, having to get terminated, or, people that end up in court or charged with theft. That's rampant in our tribe. So I kind of have to disagree with you with that. They don't need some managing, because they definitely do.
Yes, they do, and they need someone who's qualified. We have a tribal member who has a PhD in organizational management. How more qualified can you get than that? I would create a tribal administrator position and someone who has the training and the skills that can help program managers. Because a lot of times I think they may not ask questions, or because they're afraid they're going to lose their job. So it becomes this vicious little cycle, self-fulfilling prophecy. And it should be about empowering our tribal members and getting them to grow and develop. But when everybody's afraid they're going to get fired, then they're not going to stand up. They have mortgages, they have, food, children to take care of. I understand all that, Shannon. I was a welfare mother who raised 4 children by myself and put all 4 of them through college. I know exactly how hard it was. And then I went on to start program after program after program in urban Indian communities, working with people that had nothing. And then I came home and worked on the reservation. I've been very fortunate because I've got about an equal career working in urban areas and reservation areas. But you have to, you're right, when the off reservation members say you have to provide something for us, there are ways to do that. But we have to start following our own policies. If off reservation tribal members want to be angry about us not for following our procurement policies. Be angry about not advertising those positions and having a decent website, government website, where all of those should be on there so that they can participate. I have a cousin in Temecula, California, who has written FEMA grants for years. And he asked me one time, he said, gee, I'd write these proposals. I did these for Seattle and, different big cities. I'd love to do that for my own tribe. His name is Chris Heminger. He's now working for California Indian Manpower. He never grew up here, but he's a Heminger, but he has skills that he wanted to give back to the tribe. There's no point of entry for him to do that because we violate our policies.
I agree with that. Okay, LeeAnn, this has been an extremely interesting conversation. I think we're pretty much done with our questions, and so I want to leave this last little bit of time for you open for you just to leave everybody with just a sense of who you are and that kind of thing.
Thank you, Shannon. And I'd say, obviously, I feel very strongly about certain issues regarding good government and wanting this tribe to move ahead. And I do have strong opinions. I have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge to share with this tribe. I'm 71 years old. Why am I running? I'm running because to me it's to do public service. It's not because I need a job. I have a job. I'm still working full time. So that isn't why. It's because I really care about this tribe, and I feel that I have a vision that can help this tribe move ahead based on my 50 years of just watching things work and develop all over Indian country from the East Coast to the West Coast. I have nothing left to prove. I've been very fortunate in my career. I worked at the highest levels nationally. I've worked locally in nonprofits and everything in between. To me, what it's about is preparing for that next generation. I know everybody says that, but as a grandmother, one of the things that frightens me the most, it really seriously, and you may think this is corny, but it's global warming. I have spent 20 years of my life trying to fight for sustainable development. That's why I wanted to do solar. That's why the industrial hemp initiative was so critical, because industrial hemp cleans the fertilizer out of our land and out of our water and out of our lakes and rejuvenates the earth. And there are so many products that you can make from industrial hemp and fiber. Those are jobs, real jobs. We can't just survive on gaming forever. I was in DC at NCAI, working at NCAI at the time NIGRA is enacted. I was at a lot of those hearings, and it was always meant to create a local economy and to take care of our infrastructure needs, never to give out to per cap. I was a travel administrator in California for Saboba Band of Indians, Luceños. And you know what? Every day on per cap, the first of the month, all the drug dealers were waiting outside the gate. And that isn't what it's about. And I'm not saying Saboba hasn't done a good job. They've tried doing the best job they can, but they can't control the world out there. You can't control the outside environment. As much as you love your children, that's a fact. You can't control everything out there. But we can work to build healthier communities here. And that's what we need to do so that people will come home. So that there will be jobs, but it's only going to be through diversification. We've already figured out it's not going to be by gaming alone. It's going to take a lot more than gaming. And whether I'm chair or whether I'm advising in some way, I think I still have something to contribute. I've already said I'm a workaholic, so I'm probably never going to stop working. Just as I just feel passionate about a lot of these things. And I feel passionate about wanting a future for my grandchildren.
Okay, thank you so much, LeeAnn. I really appreciate you joining us this evening and answering all the questions. And I just want to remind everybody that we have several more of these candidate forums coming up. So our next one is going to be on, it's going to be on July 2nd, and we'll have Ella Robertson joining us. So thank you everybody for your time, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, LeeAnn.
Good day.